Hey guys, Mustached here to review To the Moon. Now, I think I've seen the trailer for this a few times actually, so pretty decent promotional stuff going on, at least towards its setup. And at least when it was promoted more so as a romance, and that is a section of this movie. But we'll go into the other parts of it as well. We begin meeting our two leads. Kelly, as her name is faked, but we'll keep calling her that for the simplicity of the review, and Cole, who already works for NASA. Now, we see her backstory, starting with Kelly working at a car sales pitch, and she uses a fake pregnancy patch thing to essentially help her sell the idea of bringing in cars to certain people, and that gets caught on to. However, she is eventually approached by someone who works with NASA. A guy played, or the character, sorry, is Mo, who hires her to essentially, as he puts it, sell the moon. And I think this was part of the trailer about how they were gonna, attempt to fake the moon landing just in case things didn't go right. And he goes over, Mo does, how she has changed her name many a times, that being Kelly, and wanting to bring her on and using that coercion to help her bring her into NASA personally. However, before making their way there, she ends up at a restaurant meeting Cole, and they hit it off pretty quickly. First, a few glances back and forth, and then some pretty early flirtation to, let us know that this is definitely a part of the movie. Nonetheless, they talk it up a little bit, and his closing remarks are a bit of a flirty line on top of all that. Meanwhile, we cut away to her getting to NASA, and she gets a tour due to taking a badge and walks in. And Cole, as I had already mentioned, already works there as sort of the lead behind the chair. Now, this is Apollo 11, which is interesting because I think there is a movie named Apollo 11, and I think that is a more... It's been a while since I've seen the movie Apollo 11. It's a dramatic retelling of the moon landing itself. And I don't recall if that one was a failure or not, but in this case it's, the real moon landing, as it were, following Armstrong, Neil Armstrong, Collins, and Aldrin. And of course, she already is in the preparation of doing the fake, so she hires on actors to essentially play the three of them, as well as Cole, just in case, since he didn't seem interview ready. So, we see them begin to pitch NASA as this promotional thing. We see a montage of them selling this merchandise, or bringing in that dough. And then after the fact, the two go on an official date. And during or after which, she is the one to suggest to bring a camera on the moon so that they could record what is actually happening up there. And there is an initial hesitation, but eventually with Mo there, I almost said Joe, Mo there, he is forced into a pinch, almost, with it coming with, the high regard of the president at the time, and, wanting to beat Russia, which was the big thing back then. Considering where we are now, boy, have certain things have not changed, with Russia still being one of the threatening areas of the world. Ugh. But hey, some things change and some things just stay the same. How about that for time? Anywho, so she is, providing all of this stuff, and she's working her magic, as it were. And she is with, we get a little sit down with her with one of his personal co-workers, Henry, who essentially is like a co-partner in this endeavor. And this is where she gets to learn a lot more about him and why he's doing the things he's doing. We do see a cat present in the movie, and that does come into play later on. So they set this up pretty early on with the cat needing to be chased around. It's a black cat, so they're superstitious characters, some of them at least, or at least one of them were. Anywho, so Kelly talks more and moves more about that sales pitch about how they're going to essentially, sell the moon, or get funding for the moon, and they're trying to bring in high-enders who have all this bankroll on them, but they have other plans, so she's trying to urge them to push for NASA instead. And they do get some successful funding from outside with that. Cole is sort of semi at the end of this journey alongside her, selling it as a more religious idea that, landing on the moon would bring people closer to God. And, this is Sam in accordance speaking what he believes to be true. And I actually do really appreciate that there's always been this thing, this distance, as it were, between religion and science in particular. And, as someone who is no longer religious myself, I started to wonder, for religious people, I would assume for them, science would surely be a mystery that God provided for them to bring them closer to God. So that really, really fits for his character, I feel, and really helps build a narrative that he truly believes will do that for himself, Cole that being. And we get to see, the failure and low points for him as well. So Kelly begins to describe herself at this juncture of the movie. She tells about how she worked with Kansas and how her and her mom were struggling. So the mom suggested to her to sell some basic goods, and then the basic goods started to snowball into, well, what we see her at the beginning of the movie as the scam artist, or if you just want to use that term as it is, to essentially put on that to make it by faking it, essentially. So this is where Project Artemis comes into play, the fake moon landing, because they want to make sure, Mo wants to really, really make sure that they beat Russia no matter the cost. So they're prepared, or he's prepared to, put on this fake moon landing. And, there were definitely a lot of debates after the fact of whether the moon landing was real or fake. Considering the amount of satellites we just have in space now, I mean, I don't, I think it's a bit silly, but at the time, I think that there would have been a lot of validity to questioning things in that regard at the time. So, as I mentioned, we get to see the lower ends. We see him being addressed in this interview about Apollo 1. As I mentioned, in this movie, they're at Apollo 11. Um, and he really goes off about like how he feels responsible and how he was trying to make sure that everything was prepared and how that did not bode well. And 1 through up to 11, there is there is always that question that I've always been kind of curious about. How many times have we attempted this, and were there other failed attempts? Probably, I would assume. But during this, we see that Kelly suggests that she needs to lie for her to get to the better case, and I find this is what I really love about this movie in particular, because it's very true even in the current timeline. As far late as 2024, when you go in for a typical job, let's say, as someone who's taken in business practice, they literally teach you how to lie for a job interview. This is, I don't mind sharing that secret because I feel like this is such bullshit that we have to deal with. And I'm like, why not tell people who are willing to listen to this review about that little tidbit that I was taught during my review, or, to do a interview, excuse me. And that really, to me, speaks volumes about how we even encapsulate doing jobs. But I can do an entire video talking about how we could fix that now. No political side has even come close to fixing it, so, it's not. Anyway, that's for a completely different video. Back to the analysis of the movie and recap as well. So, after that has been pressed, we see that the actors, because they're still prepping up or fumbling around, trying to figure out how to best present this fake version of the moon landing. And we see them go on another dinner ride. They take a plane all the way there. This is where I was talking about how Cole used that whole thing about God, as I had mentioned previously. This is where that actually comes into play, this little meeting that they have. But as soon as they return, they make their first kiss, letting the romance lean in. So, later on, we see Cole and Kelly have a little dance. And we see how the character, we see the director of this little moon landing, this fake moon landing thing, how far they have already come, because we're kind of montaging our way forward every time we're getting back to that section of the movie. And we see that Kelly is actually truly beginning to struggle with this, and go as far as to wanting to quit this whole thing. But Mo says on how important this is, and essentially is like, if you leave, you gotta take it to the grave, as it were. So she opens up her images for one of her coworkers pretty early, and it kind of gives her this brief reminder of like why all the things that are going on or had gone on. So obviously this fake out is still a great risk. And they're running out of time, so they're like prompting to fake out Mo, because they flip it now, where they plan to show him the real moon landing, but what they're recording is the fake moon landing just for them specifically. So they completely flip it super quick, or they're attempting to. So, how they prep this up to get it to the moon, they take this TV and recording equipment and they rush it all the way back. She helps steal it essentially, and then the cops come and then she explains it off screen so convincingly that they begin to just escort her back. So it's a little bit, it's meant to be a comical bit, like, oh, what did she really say to convince them, sort of bit. At any rate, so as, things are hitting the fan, as it were, she goes on about how she just admits it, like how she felt all her life that she was this con artist, and how because of that, how her own mom got arrested, and how it sort of just snowballed to where she is, and but that bit of her does rub off on him because he does lie about something. I forget exactly where the lie is, but it does happen at this point in the movie. This late in the movie, too. But we get some really interesting shots in the way the movie progresses from this point forward, because we get a side-by-side of the sync-up of the real moon landing and the fake moon landing that they're planning to do and shooting for this Mo guy. So we get a side by side, we get, cover to cover of like which one's which and how close it is. However, during this pause after they, the very famous line that has been cemented about landing on the moon, one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind, that has been cemented in our, history, as it were. So, it's said by both just in case. And as soon as that happens, the play part of it begins to fall apart. You have that cat, as I mentioned earlier, sneaks into that section and runs around the whole section that it would be on that camera specifically. He's like they're looking at the screen, and it's still showing the real moon landing. So yeah. And at this point, with them sort of making their way, she reveals her true name, being Winnie, and then they kiss once and for all. And the other part I gotta gravely appreciate is that, for a movie that's about the real moon landing, it's also a fake within a fake, right? Because it's a movie. So, it really is truly impressive how they are able to do a double imitation, essentially, of the moon landing, because they really do show, like, the entire rocket going up, and I don't know, like, how much of that was, like, I don't even know, like, how they did it, to be honest. I'm a little blown away at that aspect of the movie itself. I don't know if they just used actual footage for a section of it. Like, it looked really good, to be honest, or at least very, very, very small portion of it. I think it might have even been a scene. I don't know. Point being is that, this movie actually does quite cover a lot, even outside the romance. And the romance, I do feel like, there's a little back and forth. We see the characters' strengths and weaknesses, and them falling for each other really early on, and how it progresses. So I think that part is fine. I think that the moon aspect of it definitely brought a sense of shivers to me. Like, I don't know, I was really getting into it, like, especially towards the latter half of the movie when, it was encroaching upon that countdown. there was, I mean, I wasn't alive for the time, being a 1990s kid and all, but it definitely felt like a sort of a rewind of epic proportions, as it were. So I greatly appreciate that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and give this movie a 9 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10, one of those two. I think this movie is extremely impressive. Um, it actually does want to make me rewatch Apollo 11 because I remember that movie being quite dramatic in itself. But I really do like this movie. I think that it is fantastic. Uh, and even if you aren't a fan of romance, I mean it does take up a good portion of the movie, but I think that there's still quite a bit to surround it to help it feel you know not so bogged down for being a romance, if that makes any sense. Anywho, that's my review of To the Moon, and if you ended up enjoying it, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure to check out those links in the description. One will head you over to my petition to help out smaller YouTubers. Second, to my PayPal, where you can help support me and my channel directly. And third, to my Discord server, you can join, collab, shill, do all that cool stuff. And until next time, everyone, bye-bye.